I'm not a tree. That's a child. I'm an adult, right? And so the brain uses differentiation to make sense of what is versus what is not. Okay. And in fact, I would actually argue against saying versus, meaning like this isn't that is that and I'm not that, or I'm not that and that is that, right? Whatever it is, I think I just repeated myself, but it's Sunday morning. But what I want you to hear though is that your brain likes to differentiate. Okay, and that's actually a power that we're going to talk about how to use. Okay, your brain likes to make differences out of things. All right, so sometimes, for example, some people will actually say that they manifest from saying the opposite, like, right? So they'll even use opposite phrasing, which, by the way, actually neuroscience shows that that's actually quite powerful. So even, for example, when you're using affirmations and you're saying I'm a billionaire, and then you actually throw in the question of like, how is it that I'm always a billionaire, right? Or how is it that money comes to me all the time? And so you actually end up putting in a form of a question, but it sounds like you're almost saying the opposite. But really what you're doing is you're tricking your brain into say, oh, there's a comparison. I'm comparing. So all you're doing is that you're using your brain's natural ability to compare and actually create more truth by actually creating an affirmation, right? In the opposite. So, and I'm going to do a video on that and make more sense of it and probably make more sense of the neuroscience behind it. But because we ain't talking about affirmations today. Well, we can, but I want to talk about, like I said, the FBI, right? Faith, belief, and identity. But I want to talk about it backwards because people think of identity as kind of like an afterthought because you're born, right? We're all born with an identity. We're all born with an idea of who we are. Meaning, as we grow up, we have an idea of who we are. We have a name. So what is identity? Okay, so because your identity is just a thing. So like in the 50s, right? 1940s, 1930s, there was a lot of like advertisements and, the wars going on and all of this kind of stuff is going on. And so you get this concept that you're meant to do a job, right? That you're meant to do a job and the job is one thing that you do for the rest of your life. Okay. And this is 1950s, 1940s, 1930s Depression era America, right? And so you get you're a child and you're growing up in this era and you get taught, okay, my dad, and we constantly tie ideas to actions, meaning is it more important that somebody does something, right? Or is it more important that somebody is something or is someone? Right? So for example, in this world, the model of identity is, hey, what have you given to the world? Right? But when we say that, we're not saying, oh, you're just being a good person. Well, then you've given a lot to the world. No, we don't say that. We say, oh, have you got the Nobel Peace Prize? Have you won an Oscar? Did you win the blue ribbon at the hog competition? We really, really confuse this idea that like, okay, identity means competing, right? And then we think, okay, I've got to complete the action and I've got to continue action and I've got to be action oriented. Now, I'm not against action. This is not about action today, right? And go check out my other videos about action because I have a very different, maybe even contrarian, unpopular view of how action should always be part of your everyday routine, right? Most people in the manifestation community, no, you just be, right? And I think they also misunderstand Neville when he says don't act, right? He's not talking about that at all. So again, identity, who you are is not necessarily what you do. Okay. And that's going to be hard because we get really brainwashed and conditioned to accept, well, that's the only way. That's the only way that we define who we are is what we do. Nope, that's not at all. In fact, the reason why we're doing this right now is because I want you to get, since we're talking about the FBI today, right? Faith, beliefs, and identity, is that we're talking about identity first, because when you get this, the faith and the beliefs will be easier, okay? But when you get who you are and why you are who you are, then you can actually manifest even faster. Because if you're God, you don't manifest, like meaning you don't effort manifesting. You simply just do. But doing is out of your being. Are you getting it? Because see, in the 1950s, 1940s, 1930s era depression, you weren't. There wasn't separation. And I'm telling you there is a separation, right? So there's a separation between who you are, the ego on the outside, right? And so there is a massive difference between who you are. Okay, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, right? And I'm going to talk a little bit about triggers today, but I felt more compelled to talk about this today. Okay, so I might have to push off triggers till tomorrow. But what I want to do is I really, really want to get to the heart of this whole identity thing, because most people will ask you, what do you do? Oh, so how are you manifesting? See, so even people even ask that. Somebody asked me that on my live yesterday or the day before. Oh, so what are you manifesting? So, and there's nothing wrong with that question, but what I'm trying to get at is that we're constantly driven and drunk on trying to get to, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? No, that's not your identity. An action is not your identity. The action will tell you, the identity will tell you what action to do. This is very important, because when Neville says you are only basically a series of states that you fall in and out of, that is very, very key, because that will lead us to the next thing, which is beliefs, right? The B of the FBI that we're talking about today. Okay. So again, your beliefs and your faith will come from your identity. Okay. Are you with me? So if you grow up, like for example, and this is very key, please, one stay on before this. And then I'm gonna give you a new NLP technique at the end of this today. So again, how to really, really get good at manifestation. So, but there is techniques, and I'm not part of this because meta modeling, and that's what the technique I'm going to teach you today, is so hardcore that I'm not going to teach you everything, because I save some of that for the coaching program. So if you want to know the deep side of it, then join the coaching program, all right? Or even just join the free Discord. And so, okay, back to this. Identity is not who you are. I know that's going to really mess with your head, but and I am saying this, by the way, as somebody who's trained in neuroscience and psychology, because we think identity is who we are. And when I say that, I'm saying identity as in your history, your childhood, your memories, your feelings now, whatever you're feeling right now, even as you're listening, that's not who you are. Okay, that's going to be very confusing to you, because you're going to want to argue that that is who you are. All right. But even neuroscience says that actually there's a difference between what we think we are and the ego. There's a separation between those two. Now, the ego isn't your enemy. I'm not one of those people, those manifestation teachers who believe that the ego is the problem. It isn't. Our understanding of the ego is the problem. Okay, and so when you are trying to fully grasp who you are, you can't look to your memories. You can't look to, because again, who we are in terms of our ego or personality, right, is our memories. And that's why Neville's work is very powerful, because he's actually having us change the outside personality as well, right? And so again, this is like a massive workshop on identity, okay, partially today, all right, as part of the FBI thing that we're going to jump into today. All right, so again, you are not what you do. That's not who you are. You are the thing behind it. So you think, let's put your name in there, right? Let's say your name's John or, Sally. I don't care. But you are more than John. You are more than Sally, right? So the way in which you say it in the manifestation world is, oh, you're God. Yeah, but people have such loaded baggage with that. And check out my other video on that, because I tell you, if you don't have a good definition of God, you won't have a good definition of what you're able and capable of manifesting, right? Because if you have a bad definition of the imagination or Jesus Christ or God or whatever, Allah, it doesn't matter. You won't be able to manifest very well, okay? Because it matters how you define this being, because this being is your imagination, right? Now, part of this, though, is that you have to realize that you are not what you do, okay? That's really what a state is. When Neville says, listen, people are falling in and out of states, and you have to forgive them because they're in a state. What is he saying? People are not their identity. People are not their actions, right? They are divine. People are divine in origin. You are divine in origin. Yet there is a separation. Okay, so there's this really cool word in Hebrew called bina. Okay, and this is the word that you will see in English as understanding. So even verses in scripture that are talking about understanding, right? But the understanding is pictorial. What that means is the Hebrew writers, the esoteric writers, the mystical writers were writing with an image in mind. Okay, so and I mean image. Okay, so the image that's really like a great example of this image to understand understanding is like someone who is able to distinguish between the connected. You're never disconnected, right? on one another. You have that ecosystem, yeah, and you're intimately connected, but you are different, right? The sand feels very different from the ocean itself, inherently, naturally, natively, right? And so again, there is a difference. Read the verses in scripture and it's talking about get understanding, or understanding begets knowing, and all of this kind of stuff. What's very, very interesting, by the way, is when you hear what I just said, that's your tip. You want to know who your identity is, right? Between this flesh ego suit and mind that's behind you, that's behind your eyes, called awareness, called I am, right? You put after I am creates, because that's God. God is your very own I am. Okay. And so that's your power. You want to know what your identity is. Identity is not what you're doing while you're listening to this right now, right? Relate to each other here, right? For God to discover itself, God wanted to be desired to be human, right? And so we're discovering ourselves together, right? And so does that make sense? And so, yeah, so like basically, what I want you to get is that you are the difference between the two. Okay, you are the gap and you are the divine gap. That's what you are. Okay, and so you are the moment between. So your identity is God. If you don't accept this, you'll be able to manifest. You'll be able to manifest things here, be able to manifest things there. You'll be able to manifest maybe a big thing, small things, and all this kind of stuff. Absolutely everything that you want. But for you to do that, you have to disconnect. And this is very much like a matrix thing. You have to disconnect from the matrix, right? And the matrix is what you think is here. Now, let me let me say this. And Neville really does distinguish this in a couple of his lectures. I think people, and this is where people go mad with this stuff, is when he's saying that come together, or particles, or light, or whatever it is that we're experiencing here, scientifically speaking, he is not against us believing and accepting that this is a scientific world, right? So, but what he wants us to notice is that when we realize who we are at the core of our identity, right, then we begin to realize there is a separation between us and this world. So when I say understanding, or who your identity is, and I'm giving you the Hebrew, which is the esoteric understanding of what is better, then when I'm talking about separation, yes, you are separated from this world. You're in this world, but not of it. Which means you think I'm a person who's born by this mother. No, you're not. Yes, you are, obviously, scientifically speaking, but no. Okay. Right, but you're of it. So you think, you look at the outside world and you're like, you can't pay, you can't do that. Well, okay, and that's what your identity is. That, by the way, that's what we get taught, what we think our identity is, right? Because I was birthed here out of a mother, or a petri dish, or a dirty back office. It doesn't matter what it was or where it was, right? We think that we're from this, which means, again, you're in the world, but not of it. But see, that means you're not begatting of this world. That means your identity is not of this world. So you may think, oh, I'm a scientific being because I was born in a hospital at the age of blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff, right? And so Neville's saying, or actually not even Neville, Jesus, because, right, Jesus said that. You're not of the world. And so it's this idea that everything that you think you are is not who you are. Your identity. Hebrew word for in across the whole Bible, from the Old Testament, New Testament, means within, which means imagination. Okay, and so what that's saying is you are made of imagination. You can say it in a much more fun way and say, oh, you're made of star stuff, or you're made of something that's out of this world, right? But you're not made of this world. This world is made of this world. Do you get it? Your identity is that you're the creator. That's your identity. But you're manifesting every day. So it's not that you can't manifest. I'm saying you can't manifest everything you desire. Because if you keep hopping in and out, and I find this in many coaching programs, I don't find this in many YouTubes, right? People wrong with being in this world. Nothing wrong with loving being in this world. I love being alive. I love being in this world. It's fun. It's exciting, right? But when you realize that all the power and identity, right, is centrally who you are, then your identity takes on a different definition, right? Oh, right. Hi, X. How you doing? Okay, well, let me know if it keeps going. I mean, right now I haven't gotten anything saying it's bad, but let me know and I will keep that in mind as well. But yeah, I haven't gotten any reconnect or anything like that probably since there's this hiccup that it always does at the beginning, but that hasn't happened for the last like 16 minutes. Okay, cool. Thank you though. Hope you're finding yourself well though. So again, remember, you are not what you do. You are not this, but that does not mean you hate this. This is the one area where I disagree with, but you can't really gel with the idea of being divine. Well, then just say that you're a creator or that you're more, right? You're more than feels low, person who doesn't feel confident, right? That's really what it means. You're more, right? And so that's your identity, okay? And I mean, obviously, if you can't accept that you're divine, that's even more powerful. All right, so that will lead us to the next part, which is faith and belief, okay? So faith and belief are not the same things. And we get taught that faith and belief are the same things, whether you've grown up in the church or whatever it is, and a lot of religion, overly spiritual. This is why I coach. This is why I jumped on. It took me about a year to get actually comfortable to even do this because I don't like the word life coach, right? But because I saw so many people doing this and I'm trained in the areas of mental health and neuroscience and trying to help people with this is right. This is not about right or wrong. It's about identity. And I just spent the last 20 minutes talking to you about what identity is, right? And so keep that in the back of your mind. So that is who you are. But what is faith? Well, and I've shared this before, so check out my other video on this, but this is a really, I think, a way better definition to understand faith to be. And you could share your definitions of faith below, right? But faith is not belief, and belief is not faith. It is not the same, right? We've been taught they're the same. But faith, I love your definition of faith, okay? And I believe if I remember right, but yes. So is loyalty to the potential of something. Recognize this and accept this, okay? So faith is, hey, I know there's something more here, because remember, why are we talking about identity first? It has to come from this identity. If you don't believe you're God, no bueno, right? Like, you have to accept the fact that you are the most powerful being that can create, okay? And in fact, you already are, but now you just aren't accepting it, right? And so you have up to that, but then that will lead to faith, okay? Because faith is loyalty. But what is loyalty? Well, let's pick apart loyalty, okay? And I'm going to use a metaphor here, all right? Because I think this metaphor is pretty powerful when you faith and you step. So faith is loyalty, but loyalty is not a great word either, right? What loyalty, and what does it mean to be loyal to the unseen? Okay, so remember, loyal to the potential. Now we move, by the way, you have to move from the potential to, which is a what if, right? To the it will happen. Okay, so you can't stay in faith. And I know that sounds weird because, again, your mind wants to say, no, I've grown up learning that you have to have faith all of the time. So no, to me, faith is the rite of passage to living the life. So again, loyalty. Let's just talk about this. Let's deconstruct this. Loyal, and the way I hear it is to a king, to a queen, to a monarch, to something outside of you, to a pharaoh, right? So, but here's the thing. Energy, you give them your thoughts, you give them, and yes, this is where action does come into play, okay? Every day, add one physical action in this world that would actually be performed if you were loyal to the potential of what and who you want to become, right? And so again, that's what I mean when I say gifts and talents. What do you have naturally? And who would you be now if you were already that person? And that does mean putting action into action, right? And so who would you be? Action is about becoming before you even see it. That's why it's loyalty to the unseen. Faith is doing and being the thing before it shows up, okay? But what are you doing? So again, back to this metaphor of being loyal to the king, right? Okay, that's really weird. Let me see. Let me see if it's, I'll try it for a couple more minutes. If it keeps doing that, I may have to come back off and on again. But thanks for letting me know. Okay, so again, back to this metaphor of faith being a right. Need credit, which is you're divine or you're more. You're a creator. Okay, you need that.